Hello, everyone, and good morning. Welcome to today's webinar, IFF and the Community Reinvestment Fund, a new PPP resource for nonprofits. Before we get started, I would just like to take a moment to go over a few housekeeping items. My name is Eric Hughes, and I am the webinar organizer today. We want to make sure today's webinar is extremely valuable for you, so we ask that you submit all questions by clicking on the question button in the control panel and typing your questions there. I am happy to introduce our two speakers today, Omar and Alexis. Omar started his banking career in 2011 after a career in government and nonprofit consulting. He is a detailed-oriented lending professional with experience capitalizing nonprofits in amounts between $10,000 to $6 million. He enjoys developing and implementing programs that ensure the long-term sustainability of nonprofits and social enterprises. As the senior lender for IFF in Ohio, his role is to leverage IFF's resources to support targeted community-led initiatives. Our other presenter today is Alexis. Alexis is IFF's Managing Director of Lending for Michigan, Ohio, and Education. Drawing on nearly 20 years of lending experience, Alexis is responsible for working with nonprofits to finance their facility needs and for providing strategic direction for IFF's lending teams in Michigan and Ohio. Alexis also serves on the board of directors for both Jefferson East Inc. and Michigan Women Forward. In 2013, she was recognized by Crane's Detroit Business as one of the 40 under 40. Please welcome me and our two presenters for our webinar today. Thank you both.
Thank you so much. So I wanted to first thank CDA and Greater Cleveland Partnership for having us and stepping up in very short order once we notified them that we are now processing the P3 applications. Our concern is that nonprofits are not getting the type of information they need to make the right decision for their organization, may not be prioritized, and maybe lost in the shuffle. So we created this fund and this program in order to specifically be intentional about supporting the needs of nonprofits. So if we can go to the next slide, we can walk through the agenda real quick. And my favorite thing to do is go through the Q&A. So I'm really excited about that. So I'm going to run through the first part of this, and a lot of it may be redundant or information that you might have already heard before. But the Q&A, I hope, may turn up some things that your organization hasn't maybe considered in the past. So we're going to explain who IFF is, what this collaborative effort means, some helpful tips, going through the application process, and then some helpful tips, and then my favorite part, the Q&A. Next slide. So what is IFF? IFF is a CDFI, a Community Development Financial Institution, very similar to CDA. CDA just does a little differently. A lot of CDFIs kind of specialize in different aspects of the economy. So, for example, if you guys haven't ever heard of ECDI, they're a microlender, so they focus on small business development. There's other ones that will do housing-focused development. IFF focuses on nonprofits. That's what we specialize in. That's our bread and butter. So we really are intentional about serving the needs of nonprofits from a capital standpoint, strengthening their organization through capital and real estate. We operate out of 9 Midwest states, including Ohio, and we are staffed by about 100 people. Next slide. This is basically all the things we do. So our efforts are in lending and capital and finance. We also support nonprofits through real estate and real estate consulting. We also do research and evaluation and overall public policy. The next slide is just a map of our footprint and where most of our lending happens. And then the next slide is a little bit about CRF. Who is CRF? CRF is also a CDFI, and we've joined forces with CRF to deploy this P3 capital. One of the things that is required for the P3 is that you need to be a authorized SBA 7A lender. Well, that hasn't really been a need for IFF because we specialize in nonprofits. And so nonprofits typically are not eligible for SBA loans. But in this case, they are eligible. And we needed to find a partner who was an SBA lender. So we struck up a partnership, pulled our money together, and now we have a $50 million fund that we are able to deploy to help nonprofits in the Midwest. And the next slide. Exactly what I just said, the $50 million. 2 points to remember is that you do not need to be an existing borrower. You don't have to have a relationship with us in order to apply or show any interest. And then no loan is too small. So don't count yourself out if you feel like you're too small of an organization. Next slide. So what we're going to go through a little bit now is maybe try to dispel or provide some guidance regarding where you are and what position you're in and what decisions you're going to have to make given the situation now that we have more money into the fund, into the SBA. If you have not applied yet, you're good. You can make a decision on where you want to go. If you want to go with us, completely fine. We'll take your application and process it and get it submitted to the SBA as soon as possible. Next slide. If you have started an application and it was just an intake form for your local bank, you still got a chance to get out of that and make a decision. So if you haven't submitted documentation to your bank, they are not going to be able to send a complete application to the SBA. So you still can make a decision on where to apply, right? In my opinion, you should also send, if you decide not to move forward with your current bank, you should probably send them an email like you would like to rescind your inquiry, right? So that intake form was them saying, I'm inquiring about this program. I would say in an email or some documentation and save that email saying, I am no longer interested in moving forward with your bank, okay? Now it frees you up to go ahead and move forward with any institution you would like. Next slide. If you have formally applied and submitted your documentation, you should probably stay with that institution, okay? You've gotten that far with them. And my advice, just personally, is get in touch with somebody that's accountable to your organization, right? A real life person who is handling that, who is processing that application, and get status updates. Have they submitted it to the SBA? Have they received an E-Tran number? Write that down, E-Tran, electronic transaction. E-Tran number is the number that the bank will get from the SBA saying that they received that package. So that would be my personal advice, is that if you formally applied, stick with that lender, but stay on it. Be proactive, okay? Next slide. If you received a declination letter, or I've been hearing from PNC customers that they have received a letter saying the money's ran out, but you can stay in line. all right, what status is your application in? That would be my first question. What are my options? So get in touch with them and figure out what's going on there, right? I've seen another letter saying, money's run out, you can reapply. So that means that you're free to apply wherever you want. Okay? That's my interpretation of that. Next slide. So we're going to go into a little bit of very basic about our process. And in the next slide, you'll see the first step, right? So the first step you'll see once you get, what we're going to do is distribute out a communication that we sent out yesterday that kind of is pretty nuanced, and it shows, what your options are, and it also has a link to submit an inquiry, and this is what you'll see, right? So very basic intake form. What that'll do is move you into an email. That email will go to one of our lenders, and one of our lenders will reach out to you, either by phone or by email. And once they've reached out to you, you will get a link to the portal, the application portal, and they'll provide you technical assistance and walk you through the portal. The portal is pretty self-explanatory, though. There's a couple of kinks or quirks to it, and we'll talk about that in another section called helpful hints. Helpful tips. Go to the next slide. The biggest thing is once you've done your submission of inquiry, I would say now is the time to start making sure you have all your documentation ready. So when you are ready to submit with us or whoever, you're prepared. Okay. One thing I want to point out is driver's license. So an image of your driver's license, it needs to be front and back, ideally in one document, right? So don't worry though, as a director, you're not on the hook for this loan. They're not requiring a guarantee, right? But this is an SBA program, so a lot of the program is geared towards for-profit businesses. And so just know that some of these questions shouldn't be applicable to nonprofits, but it is what the system is requiring, right? And we can't change that. These are SBA requirements for it to align with their software. The other pieces of documentation are pretty self-explanatory. And if anybody has any questions, please put them in the Q&A. And then the next slide, again, is additional documentation. And this is also available in the communication that we'll be distributing out after this call. Next slide. More documentation. The last thing I would want to say is on documentation is there's going to be a calculator that Alexis is going to walk us through. What you want to do is complete that calculator, that loan calculator, and make sure that you save that document and upload it along with your other documentation. It shows that you've done your homework. It's a document now that you can reference when it's time for you to apply to forgive the loan. And I think I'm gonna let Alexis take it from here.
So, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining the call. Today, I'm going to go over the payroll calculator that you can use and that will be required to be uploaded with your documentation. So at the beginning, you're going to insert your name. And the calculator is going to help you also determine what the maximum amount you can get under the loan is. So you want to have your payroll documentation available to you. In this document, it says it can be used by all, so nonprofits and for-profits. So one of the main things that you want to understand is there are multiple calculators kind of depending on when you started your business. Or when the nonprofit started. So if the nonprofit was operating from January 1st, 2019 through 12/31/2019, we're going to use that first calculator. And then for companies that are began operating between February 15th, 2019 and June 30th, there's another calculator. And then there's and you're going to use your information based on March 31st, 2019 through March 31st, 2020. Anyone beginning operating after 6/30, you're going to use your information from January 1st, 2020 and February 29th, 2020. So we're going to start with the very first calculator. So you're going to enter your salaries and wages total. And you can get that. I know I've talked to several nonprofits that have received that information from maybe their payroll company, ADP, Paychecks, whoever you're working with. If you offer benefits, you're going to enter that information, both retirement and health benefits, and then state and local taxes. You're going to get a total. So this is all based on the annual amount. Just remember, we're talking about from 1/1/2019 to 12/31/2019. And then using the information above, we're going to figure out what your available loan amount will be. So this is the maximum loan calculator. And we're going to start with the calculator. If this is option 1, if you began your business or the nonprofit was in existence prior to February 15th, 2019. So you're going to take that last number, total payroll cost right here, and you're going to plug it in right here in line 28, row E. So you're going to take that. One of the distinguishing factors in this program is that if you have an employee that makes over $100,000, you can only include $100,000 of that payment. So anything above that cannot be included. So you do want to make sure when you're calculating up here your salaries and wages that you exclude the amount over. So say someone makes $150,000, you can only include $100,000 in your salaries and wages. You want to exclude that $50,000. So if you have employees that are over $100,000, they want to know the number in the calculator, and then they want to know the total salaries for employees earning over $100,000. So if you have 2 employees that are earning $150,000, you would put $300,000 in here. And then the next box is if you have received any other economic injury or disaster loan funds, we're going to add that number in here. And then the monthly, and that's because it's going to be refinanced. So the monthly payroll cost is a calculation. As you can see, there's a formula in there. So when you input into E28, it's going to automatically calculate the average. So if I put payroll is 100,000 annually, just for talking sake, see, it's going to calculate what the average monthly is. And then based on that, you would receive 2.5 times your payroll. And that additional half is to cover the other items that you're able to account for, which are things such as utilities, mortgage interest, and rent. So this is option 1 for the calculator, and this is based on your operations beginning prior to February of 2015, or I'm sorry, February 15th, 2019. So if your operations began between February 15th, 2019 and June 30th, 2019, you're going to use this information. So you're going to put your months of operation here. And then you're going to put your total payroll cost as calculated in the calculator above. So this total payroll cost, you're still going to bring that down to here. You're going to list the number of employees that are earning over 100,000, the total salaries, proceeds again, and then your monthly calculator. So your calculator, depending on what number you put here, so if you put 9 months here for the number of months you were in operation, you go down here, the monthly calculator is going to be taking that number as part of the calculation. So it's going to take this number from here to tell you how many, what your monthly payroll, your average monthly payroll cost is, and divide that by your total, your annual. And then you'll have a loan calculator. Again, your maximum amount of what your loan will be, which will be 2.5 times your payroll. And then if your operations began after June 30th, you're going to input your total payroll costs, which came from above, from this, we're back here, from E17. The number of employees that were over 100,000, how much that is, what the total is. If you have any loans through the SBA program that you've taken out as a result of the current situation, and then it's going to give you your monthly payroll cost, and that's divided by 2 because we're only using 2 months versus 12. That'll be your monthly or your maximum loan amount. And that is the form that you will need to complete to go along with your application that Omar has been walking you through. Now I'm gonna go back to the slideshow. And turn it back over to Omar.
Awesome. Okay, so you have expressed interest. You filled out the inquiry form. You've heard back from one of our lenders. You've started getting your documentation ready, hopefully gotten it all ready to go. You've received the calculator, you've moved through that process as well, got that done, and now you're ready to go into the application portal and submit your application. It's a 4-step process, pretty intuitive. First things first, you complete the questionnaire, and let me pull it up real quick. I'm a visual person, so I like to. Step 1. It's going to ask you for the average payroll, and then there's going to be a question of how much the eligible loan amount is. That's grayed out, so don't worry about that. Then the next thing is it's going to ask for contact information. You're going to put in your director's contact information. They're going to ask for a social security number, SBA. We can't get around it. It's required. They're going to put your personal social security number in there. Ownership percentage of business, you're going to put 0. Again, this is all stuff that we're going to tell you again, so don't worry about remembering all this. I just want you to kind of have it in the back of your head. And then years as owner, it's how many years you've been the director of the organization. And then the business information, submit that information, pretty straightforward. And then there's a part about ownership structure. Again, these are questions that are geared towards for-profit businesses. Those fields are not required, so just leave them alone, leave them blank. Then you're going to go to step 2. Step 2 is on email verification, for security, to cut out any fraud or any that kind of thing. So you're going to submit your email, and then you'll get an email confirmation back, an invitation to move forward with the next steps. That I'm just going to tell you right now, it's not instant like normal. So don't freak out when you don't receive an instant email confirming. It may take 15 minutes. I've heard it take a couple hours. If it takes more than that, then you might want to just be proactive and submit a ticket through their customer service number at the bottom. But rarely does that happen. I've only had one person who has taken more than a couple hours. And then step 3 is time to upload documents. Very simple, and then it's ready to, once if you have all your documents ready, there shouldn't be any issues there. And then submit for loan review. Once it's submitted, now you're not done yet. So once you've submitted, you want to make sure the processor gets it, and the processor is checking for any errors or missing documents. But this program is pretty streamlined. So if you have everything and you have all your ducks in a row, you shouldn't be hearing back from this person. If you hear back and they need something, get it to them as soon as possible. And then once they tell you they're ready, they're going to go ahead and submit it to the SBA, and then wait for that magic number called the E-Tran number. Once you get the E-Tran number, you should be in good shape and you should be getting the money. So once it's submitted to the SBA, then and approved, then CRF will be reaching out with closing documentation and disbursement of funds. So that's the process. Let's go to the next slide. And so let's talk about a little bit about helpful tips. So the ones on the screen right now, obviously, get your application, get your documentation ready. We've stressed that already. Be prepared for your initial meeting with the loan officer. And I feel like it's always nice if you have a financial support person that you lean on, whether it's your CFO or your finance chair, to have them on the call. My preference is to have this call via a video chat, just so you can see me and we can talk to each other, look at each other in the eye, and get this done. And then it just kind of humanizes the situation, right? And then also my style is I like to share screens so I can see what you guys have uploaded and what you have submitted. So that way we knock out any missing or incomplete or any issues on the front end, right? So you guys can submit a clean application. The cleaner the application, the smoother the process will go. And then don't forget to save the calculator and upload that documentation. the thing about this was not on this slide, but some confusion has happened with people figuring out the NEIC code. It's NEIC code, and that is like the category of your business that's identified by what is that, Alexis?
The NAICS code, it's NAICS.
Yeah.
And it's just an industry category.
Yeah, industry category. I don't know who creates it, but it's the way that the SBA. I'm sorry to interrupt. It's the way that it's a required field for the SBA, and Google is your friend. So, there's tools out there that can help you identify what your specific industry or sector is, so that you can get the closest thing that resembles your business. And there's no there's no NEICS code that exactly mirrors the industry or sector or the business you're in. You're not going to find one that's going to 100% reflect everything that you guys do, but find the one that is most accurate to what you guys do as an organization. Alexis, if you have anything to add to that.
No, I just would say that if you Google NEICS code, it'll take you to the website where you can just look up your industry, and you're not going to put in nonprofit. You want to be very specific to what kind of services you're providing to the community. So don't just type in nonprofit. You want to, if it's workforce development, if it's a food pantry, if it's a school, you want to definitely be a little bit more specific when you're putting the information in.
The other thing is that for every document that you're going to upload for whatever category that is required for the submission of this loan. So let's say there's a part for payroll information, right? There's going to be a section there that you upload your payroll information. My experience has been that it only will let you upload one document. So you want to make sure that if you have multiple documents that reflect your payroll information, you combine those into one document in order to upload it all into that one part of the portal. So just get your ducks in a row now, so that way when you are ready to upload, it's pretty seamless and smooth. Those are the helpful hints I can think of.
Omar and Alexis, this is Eric from the Greater Cleveland Partnership. I just would like to make everyone aware that our team at GCP and at CDA can help the nonprofits identify their NEICS codes and kind of help with those basic information if they need that to be done as well.
Thank you. And that actually just leads me to another statement of how appreciative we have been to the Cleveland group of CDA and GCP. You guys have been doing tremendous work getting these organizations ready, providing the technical assistance, and while we do have a lot of capacity here as our organization, we're processing a lot of applications, and the cleaner those applications are, the easier it'll be for everybody, and the more applications we'll be able to submit to the SBA when the window opens. So we really appreciate your partnership. Let's go to the next slide. Q&A. This is my favorite part. Does anybody have any questions? And me and Alexis are going to trade off if anybody has any questions.
Yep. So at this point in time, we're going to open up the questions. If anyone has any questions, please submit your questions by clicking on the question button in the control panel and typing your question there. And we'll try to get to all the questions. Omar and Alexis, our first question is, given the competitiveness of the PPP program and availability, does IFF or CRF have any resources available to assist nonprofits other than the PPP?
Wow, that last, you threw me for a loop on that last part of the question.
So I can
Other
take it.
than, yeah,
Oh.
okay, go ahead.
So we don't have, IFF doesn't really have a working capital product that specifically focuses on this particular need, but what we have been able to do, if we have nonprofits that maybe have some equity in their real estate, we can certainly leverage that equity to provide you some working capital. Unfortunately, we don't have a revolving product, but we could potentially talk with you about taking equity out of the real estate to provide you with working capital. So that's one vehicle we could use. To support you through this. That's probably the limitations around what IFF can do at this point in time. And I know, we're focused on this program right now.
Yeah,
So.
I would agree. This is, in my opinion, this is the best program to support nonprofits that are eligible. And that's why we've tried our best to mobilize and partner, with our regional, partners to get the nonprofits access to this program. So it is identical to what the banks are offering. Okay. So we're not competing with any bank to do this. What we're trying to do is just create another access point so that nonprofits can get a fair shot at this money, right?
I'm
sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I will say in the legislation that came out, that is, I think it's signed, I'm not sure exactly where it sits, but there was an allocation of $30 billion specifically for CDFIs. So that does help because I think we were in one big pool initially. So it does help because those funds are designated specifically for SBA applications that come in through CDFIs.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Like you stole my thunder there. No, playing.
I'm sorry. I didn't know you were going to say that, Omar. Great minds think alike.
Okay, so moving on to the next question. We have a nonprofit that started an application with PNC, but got caught at the end because they didn't have the paperwork they were requesting, as in the paperwork simply does not exist. Any advice on how a small nonprofit can access help for free that can produce the paperwork required for submission?
That's a specific question to that organization. So my email is down there at the bottom, and please reach out to me and we can troubleshoot that documentation issue. Usually if that documentation doesn't exist, there's a workaround that we can find to, because there's multiple methods of submitting the documentation for the SBA to get, there are more than one way to get the right type of documentation. So maybe that lender or representative wasn't aware of ways that a nonprofit can get around that.
Okay, great, thank you. Another question, can a 501c6 apply for assistance?
Alexis, I know the answer if you don't.
No.
I've gotten that question and I've looked everywhere and I couldn't find any language that C6s are eligible.
Yeah, no. We had we had an instance and I was told no, unfortunately.
Okay. Moving on to the next question. This nonprofit submitted an application through Chase. Chase received 300,000 applications before funds ran out last week. They have not yet received a loan reference number or an E-Tran number from this financial institution. Would you advise that they resend and apply through IFF?
No. The
Go.
answer is no, unfortunately, as much as I personally am anguished by that scenario. If you have applied with somebody else and you're stuck, you've already submitted, then you should, my advice would be to, get in contact with whoever at Chase is processing your application and get some answers. And if you can't get any answers, then you gotta, I think you just have to persevere and do your best to get somebody at Chase to be accountable to your organization and get you some answers. The answers are: have you submitted my application to the SBA? Have you received an E-Tran number? If they get the E-Tran number, then they should be processing your approved application within 7 to 10 business days, and you should get dispersal of funds.
Great, thank you. Next question is, on the PPP, can applicants use bonuses for their loan calculation or the forgiveness calculation? Example, an annual bonus that is provided to employees in March of each year.
I have not seen anything that allows for bonuses as part of the calculation. What I've seen, the only thing that I've seen offered are benefits and taxes. So the only other thing I could suggest you do is go to sba.gov and just double check it, but I have not seen anything anywhere that allows for bonuses.
And I'll add to that I would advise you probably want to be conservative on that and leave that out. What you want to do is, do these calculations. This calculator is designed to get you the most amount of money that you qualify for, but not too much money that you are not able to submit the documentations and verify that you can get this money forgiven, right? So you don't want to have too little money that you don't want to ask for too little money that you might have gotten more money, if you use the calculator, but you don't want to ask for too much money that not all of your loan can be forgiven. So.
Yeah, and I think the spirit of the program also is for payroll protection, which is why bonuses wouldn't be necessarily included, because that's above and beyond, kind of depending on what the organization chooses to do. So, it's really set up to protect 8 weeks of payroll in the event that you may have had an interruption in funding.
Great, thank you. Moving on to the next question. What would you recommend if the lender you applied through is now being sued for mishandling of the process?
It depends on what stage you are in that process. Yeah. I think a lawsuit is probably going to be inevitable with the way that some of these applications have been mishandled. That's one of the reasons why we've created this portal, given you more access to it, as in order to control what's being submitted, and then creating as much transparency on the back end that you're getting regular status updates as well, so you know where you stand at every stage of the process. And then also you have a personal contact that is also accountable to you. Accountable to getting you answers, right? Getting you, answers to your questions. We once your package is ready to submit, we're submitting these along with every other bank, right? So it's going to be first come, first serve, and if the money runs out, but what we're doing is doing our best to give you guys the best chance to get an approval through the SBA.
Great. What would you recommend for people filling out the application that are experiencing technical issues when uploading their documents? Is there another route they can take to get that documentation to you?
They can email the documentation directly to us, because we have access to the portal and we can upload it if there continues to be problems.
Yeah, when you get to the stage where you're uploading documents and there's an issue there, at the top left-hand corner, there is going to be the name of the person receiving your application, who will be the processor, and the contact if you click on that name, an email address will pop up, and then right below the name is that person's phone number as well.
Great.
So my advice would be that if you have any issues, or even if you maybe submit something and you think it's unique to your organization, I would be proactive and emailing that person as you're submitting the application, and just saying in the subject line, put the name of the organization, P3 application, and just saying, hey, just want to get ahead of this. This is our unique situation, and I want to give you that information on the front end. So then that way you're not trading emails or trading phone calls on the back end.
Great, thanks. I just wanted to provide another reminder to everyone listening that if you had any questions, this is the time to submit your questions by clicking on the question button in the control panel and typing your question there. We did have another question in regards to the PPP applications. This nonprofit's hearing that they could submit multiple applications to multiple banks at the same time, knowing they can only receive one loan, but should try as many entry points as possible. What's your take on that?
That is a piece of misinformation that has been spreading. When you apply with us, you are attesting that you do not have another outstanding application, and so no, we will not. If you are, because there's no trigger on the front end to find out if you are applying somewhere else, but the SBA is notorious for, historically, for finding a reason why a loan is not going to get a guarantee, because that's what the SBA does, is guarantee loans for banks. And so I would caution against applying somewhere else, because that means you're lying on your application, which means that's fraud. But also it means that it could jeopardize you getting your loan forgiven on the back end. This program has been put together in very quick fashion, and there has not been a lot of guidance given to how the SBA is going to be looking at these applications on the back end. So I would caution against that.
Okay, while we wait for some more questions to come in, I'd just like to make everyone aware that GCP and CDA staff is available for any guidance and assistance you may need through this process. Just like Omar said, to have a clean, best application possible. Our teams are here to assist you in doing that, just so we can get more of this PPP money distributed to the Cleveland area nonprofits is definitely not a bad thing. Also, too, just to reiterate, this webinar and presentation will be made available after the webinar. It will be posted on our GCP InGear site. That's www.gcp pppingear.com. And there we have a whole bunch of resources as they're made available to us, just to try to keep everyone updated and aware of the constantly changing environment during this situation. We just got another question. Institutions that have been approved for a loan and signed documents have mentioned that there is no language about forgiveness. Do you have any details?
In the legislation or in what
I believe it's in regards to their loan documentation. I guess so.
Yeah, I'm not aware. I don't have the answer to that one.
Okay. So
Yeah,
standard.
we haven't seen anything. I haven't seen the documents, so I don't know. But if you are managing through making sure you're using it for eligible cost, and tracking it, then that's going to be your best opportunity for forgiveness once you're able to apply for forgiveness. I know that IFF, and we can certainly send out more information. IFF is going to be partnering with Fiscal Management Associates, one of our consultants, to provide a webinar to talk about what kind of documents you need to make sure you have on the back end for forgiveness. So we'll make sure that we get that information out to the, those that are involved on the call regarding that webinar.
Great. So this is going to be our last call for questions. If anyone has any questions, you have the next minute or so to click on the questions button in the control panel and type your question there. I'll just give that a couple of seconds to see if we get any new ones. But while we wait, I just wanted to thank you both, Omar and Alexis, and IFF for giving us some time today to provide some very valuable information and resources to the nonprofits in our area. It's extremely helpful and beneficial during this time.
Yeah, I want to also thank you just for the timeliness of how fast you guys were able to react and mobilize, put this together, and then also share the information that we provided as an option for nonprofits. I think we're going to really need nonprofits going forward. So we want to make sure that they are as strong as possible in order to mobilize and support needed underserved populations at this time. One more thing is just a request from all the nonprofits on this call to please share this information once you receive it, forward it to your peers, your friends, your enemies, whoever, just so that again, the more nonprofits are able to access this capital, the better we'll all be.
Great, thank you so much for that. Doesn't look like we got any new questions. So again, in closing, I just want to recommend everyone to check out our GCP InGear site. It's www.gcpingear.com for all the up-to-date information and resources specifically to the Cleveland area and nationally. I hope everyone found this presentation today engaging and informative. Again, a recording of this webinar will be sent out to all applicants. If you have any thoughts to share, please let us know. And this concludes today's session. Thank you again. Bye.